Alright, hey guys, today's video is about collecting for the Atari Jaguar. And what I've done is I've gone through my collection and picked out a handful of games that I think are great games to start with if you're just starting to collect for the Atari Jaguar, or if you're interested in picking one up and you want to see what the game selection is like. The following games that I've picked out I think are great starter games to start out with buying and collecting and playing. Most of the games here are all exclusive and only available on the Atari Jaguar with a few exceptions. And what I've done is the games that I've picked out, I've made sure that they're not too rare and especially not too expensive, so everything here is relatively easy to get a hold of and fairly inexpensive. So what do you say we get started with the first game, Alien vs. Predator. Alien vs. Predator is a system seller for the Jaguar. In fact, most people buy the system just for this game, and it is totally warranted because this is one heck of a shooter. If you're a fan of old school first-person shooters such as Doom or Wolfenstein, you definitely have to check out this game. What it does best is the atmospheric horror of never knowing when those aliens are going to be coming for you. You open a door, you walk in, you turn around, and there's like 3 or 4 or 5 of them there coming at you. It's really tense, it's very atmospheric, it's a lot of fun, it's very challenging. The controls take a little bit of getting used to because the Jaguar controller is definitely not the best out there, we all know that. But once you get it down, this is one heck of a shooter that is without a doubt worth buying an Atari Jaguar for. You can play as, the Predator or the Alien, but honestly you're going to want to stay playing as the Marine because I think that's where this game is at its best. Without a doubt, if you're picking up a Jaguar, make sure that Alien vs. Predator is one of the first games you buy. Tempest 2000 is yet another system seller for the Jaguar, and if you're a fan of the original, I think you're going to really love this one, especially if you're a fan of sort of over-the-top psychedelic visuals, a really techno-y soundtrack, and some really strange sound effects, but it all comes together to make this really amazing experience that you can only get on the Jaguar. The only thing that might be better than this version here is Tempest 3000 on the Samsung Nuon, which I personally prefer a little bit more because it's just a bit more wacky, but Tempest 2000, one of the best games you could buy on the Atari Jaguar. Iron Soldier is a mech-based first-person action game that has a really slow sort of gameplay feel to it, but it fits itself really well because you really do feel like this big, powerful mech that can shoot down these buildings and helicopters and tanks and everything, and it's a lot of fun because of its slower pace. It allows the game to sort of give you different mission structures that, despite being a fairly slow game, it actually kind of works in its favor because the levels are over within a few minutes. They're relatively small and confined, but it actually shows off, the 3D capabilities of the Jaguar. It actually has some fairly impressive explosions in here. I mean, it might look primitive to some of you, but for those of us that played the Jaguar when it first came out, this was some pretty impressive stuff for its time. If you're not into slow-paced action mech games, you might want to look elsewhere, but this is definitely a game that's exclusive on the Jaguar that's worth checking out. The Jaguar doesn't have much to offer in terms of traditional puzzle games, but Flipout here is an exception, and thankfully it's a really enjoyable one. It has different types of games within it. You start off having this tile flipping game and you have to match the colors, and it starts off really simple, but it progressively gets harder as they introduce different colors and little characters that come and try and mess you up on the playboard. And eventually you get into different games that are based around the same concept of matching colors, but it varies up the gameplay a little bit. So if you're a fan of puzzle games, Flipout is a definite exclusive worth buying on the Jaguar. If you're a fan of RC Pro-Am type racers or any top-down racing games, you definitely need to check out Power Drive Rally. What's unique about this game is it has different weather effects, different times of day, and as you finish races you have to repair your car, which costs money, and that currency actually determines whether or not if you can keep continuing on or not. If you lose a race, it deducts money, and you use this money to also, repair your car. So it's a really cool continue system that introduces different things such as not just racing, but also sort of skill tests where you have to back up and stop and go through these obstacle courses. It's a really fun game. It's challenging, but definitely worth checking out for fans of racing games. Rayman is one of the exceptions on my list because this is not exclusive to the Jaguar. It's also available on many different platforms, but I still think you should get the Jaguar version because many people don't actually know that that's how Rayman originally was conceived, as a Jaguar game, which was later ported to the PlayStation, which actually ended up coming out before the Jaguar version, despite this one being in development first. Anyway, that little rant out of the way, This is what actually made me pick up a Jaguar in the first place. The game absolutely looks beautiful. There's differences between the different versions. There's some aspects of gameplay that are absent from, the PlayStation version per se. But the thing about the Jaguar version is that it has twice as many colors as the PlayStation version. Even though it might be lacking in other graphical areas, I still think you should pick it up because it's sort of the icon and the mascot for the Jaguar. I mean, it's a cheap game. Rayman's amazing if you haven't played it before, and there's no load times because it's on a cartridge, so definitely check out Rayman on the Atari Jaguar. Of all the games on my list, besides Alien vs. Predator, Defender 2000 might be the hardest and most expensive to find, but trust me, it's totally worth it. It's another game from Jeff Minter, the creator of Tempest 2000 on the Jaguar as well, and this game has once again over-the-top flashy visuals, a techno soundtrack, really weird sound effects, but man is it a lot of fun. It's very fast-paced, it's pretty challenging later on, so if you're a fan of arcade-style games and you want to mix it up a little bit with some Jeff Minter style, which I personally love, check out Defender 2000. Zool 2 is the sequel to Zool, which was one of my actually personal favorite platformers back when I played it on the Sega Genesis. Zool 2 is exclusive to the Jaguar, and admittedly it's not the best platformer you could play out there, but this game is so crazy in that if you're a fan of collectathon 2D platformers, this game is probably the pinnacle of collectathon games because there's so many things to collect in here, but it ties into the gameplay because in order to reach the end of the level you have to collect a certain amount of these little icons that are hidden, well not hidden, they're all over the game world. You have to collect enough and then it'll let you progress to the end of the level. So it's got some exploration elements to it where you just don't go from point A to point B. You have to explore and collect the items in order to progress. It's pretty challenging. The controls are definitely not the best. It's very fast paced, but it's worth checking out if you want a good exclusive platformer on the Jaguar. There aren't many shooters in terms of traditional side-scrolling ones on the Atari Jaguar, so that's why I figured I'd put TrevorMcPhee in the Crescent Galaxy in this list. It's very inexpensive, it's admittedly not that great of a game, but if you're looking for a unique shoot-'em-up experience that you can only get on the Jaguar, it's kind of worth checking out. It has some really interesting power-up ideas, and some of the enemy designs and levels are fairly creative, but don't expect too much. I'm putting it in here because it's cheap, it's easy to get, and it's exclusive to the Jaguar. It's a great starter game for your collection. On a better note, the Jaguar did receive a port of the classic shooter Raiden. Now, yes, it is on other systems, and the other ports are probably a little bit better, like the PlayStation version, but the fact that the Jaguar actually has a port of Raiden, an amazing classic side-scrolling shooter, it's worth checking out, especially if you haven't played it before. Okay, admittedly, I wasn't going to put this last game in the video, but, oh man, I just need other people to play this, because honestly, it's so weird, and it's one of the hardest platformers I've ever played, ever. And that's Bubsy and Fractured Furry Tales. It's exclusive to the Jaguar. It's, it plays similar to the other Bubsy games, which honestly I was a pretty big fan of the original one on the Sega Genesis. But the Jaguar version, man, when I recorded this footage here, I died so many times I couldn't even beat the first level. It's an incredibly hard game. It has some really interesting character designs, and the levels are just, I don't know, just play this game, okay? See if you can beat the first level. See if you die as many times as I did. I can't even count. I probably died like 40 times, 50 times, trying to beat this first level. Maybe I'm terrible at this game, but I don't know, I just felt like it deserved to be in this video. Check it out, Bubsy on the Atari Jaguar. Alright guys, thanks for watching. That's going to wrap it up for my video and helping you start collecting for the Jaguar, or, if you're thinking about getting a Jaguar, these are some of the game options that are out there for you that are pretty cheap, relatively inexpensive. Thanks for watching, guys.